Hey guys, well, I'm sure by now you've all heard about what is being called a historic peace treaty between Israel and the United Arab Emirates. The specifics are still being hammered out, but this is big, isn't it? This is only the third Arab nation that has entered into any kind of pact with Israel, and it's the first in 25 years. Now, the reason I wanted to do this video is I see a misunderstanding out on the internet right now. I believe there are many believers who are exaggerating what really happened here. They are treating this as if it is the covenant of Daniel 9, where the Antichrist brokers a 7-year peace treaty between Israel and the Arab nations. I am even hearing that Donald Trump, is the Antichrist because of his involvement in this. Well, let's think this through biblically and not just emotionally. To begin with, the Antichrist is not an American president. Daniel tells us he arises out of Europe, out of the 10-nation coalition that is going to be reformed, what many are referring to a restoration of the ancient Roman Empire. This is the 10 horns of Daniel 7. Out of those horns, an 11th will rise up and subdue them. This is the Antichrist, who will become the world leader until Revelation 19, when the Lord returns and defeats him. So it seems the Antichrist will be European, though there are some good arguments he might be Assyrian or maybe Jewish. My point is, he is never mentioned as coming from the States, so relax, Donald Trump, you're not the Antichrist, you're off the hook. Plus, Daniel also says in chapter 7:20, the Antichrist appearance will be greater than his fellows. In other words, as far as looks go, this guy is going to be an absolute knockout. Extremely good looking. Again, sorry, Donald Trump. Well, let's look at the covenant of peace that Daniel is talking about. In Daniel 9:27, it says, he will confirm a covenant with many for 1 7. In the middle of the 7, he will put an end to the sacrifice and offering, and on a wing of the temple, he will set up an abomination that causes desolation until the end that is decreed is poured out on him. So he is going to confirm a covenant with many for 1 7. That is a 7-year period. Now, who is that many this covenant is made with? Well, Daniel 9:24 tells us, it says, for your people and your holy city. The people are the Jews, and the city is Jerusalem. But the covenant, it says, will be made with many. Now, I believe this is also speaking of the Arab nations. I think this has to be. Why? Because the covenant is going to include Israel building their third temple on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. Well, why do I say that? Well, because Daniel in chapter 9, verse 27, and Jesus in Matthew 24:15 speak of the abomination of desolation. This is when the Antichrist, in the middle of the 7-year covenant, at the 3.5-year mark, will march into the Holy of Holies in the temple and proclaim that he is God and demand to be worshiped. Well, that can't happen unless there is a temple, right? And listen, if the Jews tried to build that temple without some kind of covenant, that whole region would erupt into war. Therefore, I believe the many in this covenant is the Jews and the Arab nations around them. So, is what we see happening right now with Israel and the UAE that peace treaty? No, this is a treaty with one Arab nation. Now, I do think others will join. Benjamin Netanyahu, when he announced this treaty, said that it could open the door for others, and we'll look at that a little bit more in a minute. But right now, this has stirred up as much tension in the region as it has created peace. Iran dubbed the deal as an act of strategic stupidity and warned the world will never forgive the normalizing of relations with the criminal Israel occupation regime. And you can bet this is going to stir into action some of Iran's proxies in the area, the different terrorist groups. The Houthis in Yemen are attempting to mobilize Muslims all over the world to thwart this plan. The Turkish Foreign Ministry said this about the UAE's willingness to sign this pact. The people living in the region will not forget and never forgive this hypocritical behavior. The Palestinians are incensed and have claimed that the UAE has stabbed them in the back. Jordan, Iraq, Tunisia, and Algeria have also voiced their opposition. So is this the peace treaty that Daniel prophesied about in Daniel 9? No, not even close. But here's an interesting take. This may be prophetic in a different sort of way. It may actually be setting the stage for war rather than peace. Let me show you what I mean by that. Ezekiel 38 and 39 tells us there is going to be a war, I believe soon, where a coalition of nations will attack Israel. But here's the thing, there are going to be a few Arab nations that will condemn that attack and question the nations involved. Ezekiel 38:13 says, Sheba and Dedan will stand against this, questioning the actions of these invading nations. Now here's the thing, Sheba and Dedan are Saudi Arabia and the surrounding area, which would include the UAE. So because of this prophecy, I believe we can expect Saudi Arabia to follow the UAE's lead and sign some kind of covenant with Israel soon. But here's my point. Rather than ending in peace, this is probably lining everything up for war. The war of Ezekiel 38 and 39. Like a jigsaw puzzle, God is fitting those nations that will support Israel into place. Here's the timeline I think is ahead of us. Like I said, I believe this war is going to break out soon, and this is going to set the stage for the Antichrist to emerge onto the scene. When it looks like everything is escalating and spinning out of control, when the world is desperate for answers, this good-looking, charming, political genius anointed by Satan is going to present a plan that everybody is going to accept, a plan that is going to stun the world. He will do something everybody thought was impossible, broker a peace deal that not only ends the conflict between Arab and Jew, but will also allow the Jews to rebuild their temple. Listen, this man is going to mesmerize the masses, and the Bible says the whole world is going to worship him. So let's be biblical about this peace treaty that was just signed. It's not the peace treaty of Daniel 9 that is going to start the final 7 years before the Lord returns. And the one brokering it is not the Antichrist. So Donald Trump is not the Antichrist. But what it may be doing is aligning the nations that must be in place to usher in the war of Ezekiel 38 and 39. Well, that's all I got. Let me know what you think down below. God bless you, hit those buttons, and I will see you in the next video.